I work for ISG. I'm the head of sustainability there. I think one of the things that we need to do more of in construction is time is money. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? In a former life, I was a professional figure skater, got real and realized that the Olympics were not in my future. Just because you're really good and passionate about something, sometimes you need to learn when to let it go a bit. So I went to architecture school, and in my last year realized I didn't want to be an architect. I started in construction right out of uni. There was a really big project that I put my hand up for, actually, in our construction company. I'd say a really incredible first job on the CV for a girl in the construction industry, kind of finding her feet. I found myself made redundant, as so many of us did in the construction industry. You have to get back on the horse and just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get on with it. I think one of my hopes is that sustainability now, it won't be so niche because everyone's got to get involved. So.
Hi, thank you very much for watching this podcast. I'd like you to do me a favor, and I don't mean here just to ask you to subscribe and to follow, but what I'd really like you to do is to share this podcast with as many people as you think would benefit from it. I would love to maintain the quality of people that are joining me on this podcast, and so in order for me to do that, I really need your help. And the way that you can help is by sharing the podcast with the people that you know that you think may have a slight interest in, or maybe a deep interest in, the guests and topics that are covered on this podcast. It is all about construction, so that may lead your thinking towards people that are already in the construction industry. But I don't think we necessarily need to be that narrow with the people that we can reach out to. It could be somebody that's looking to get into an industry, but they're not quite sure what industry they want to get into. Maybe it's a teenager that is just finishing their GCSEs or starting A-levels. Maybe it's somebody that's doing an English degree at university, but is not quite sure what they want to do with that degree. So I invite you just to share this podcast with as many people that you know so that we can grow this community, so that we can maintain the quality, engaging conversations that we're having together. Thank you for your help. Hello and welcome. We have today on the Thriving Construction podcast, Anna Foden. Anna, it's so good to have you here with us.
Thank you, Darren. It's good to be here.
So just for everybody that's listening and watching, what is it that you do? I know that currently that you work for ISG, but what is it that you do? What's your specialty?
Yeah, so I work for ISG. I'm the head of sustainability there. We're a large construction company, so I work across 3 business units, our high street retail unit, commercial fit out, and data center. So I span a range of construction typologies. So we do everything from statutory environmental compliance checks on our jobs.
Okay, sorry. Let's rewind here.
Yeah.
Statutory environmental checks on our jobs. What does that mean?
Right. So there are a lot of laws that we have to comply with to make sure that our jobs on the ground aren't polluting or interfering with biodiversity or any native species that might be protected. So we have to make sure that we check them regularly so that our people on the ground are following the rules and that we're doing everything right. We have the right permits. If there is an issue, it has to be reported in the proper way. Okay. So that's one part of what we do.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Another part is there's a whole sustainability aspect with implementing sustainability certifications like BREEAM, LEED, WELL. So we really do have to help our project teams make sure that certification scheme, whichever one it is, or multiple, that those are running smoothly, that the job's getting procured properly in order to make those certifications happen. And then I also help out at the group level implementing ISG's Right Thing First strategy. So the E strand of that for us is a really big deep dive into carbon reductions right now. So that's something that is really important to us. Our CEO, thankfully, is really behind it. So we are in the process now of just making sure that is implemented into every system so that it's not just a tack-on, bolt-on thing for the sustainability team to implement, that we are making sure that it's integrated into every process that we do. So we're doing a full-scale rehaul of all of our processes right now to make sure that those KPIs are implemented in.
Wow. Sounds pretty involved. It sounds like as well the whole kind of sustainability in your job title can be like really, really far reaching and a little bit wishy-washy. Would you say that it's that, or is it kind of quite pointed?
It's funny you say that. I think in the past, perhaps, but and maybe some sustainability professionals feel that, but we at ISG in the past few years have become really focused. There's a few key things that we really wanted to focus in on. So before we had our Right Thing First policy, we had a series of 4 policies in place around social value, environmental compliance, carbon reductions, and the circular economy. Okay. So we really did focus in on 4 things there a few years ago, which has really helped be the guiding light of where we're taking our business. And it's really helped focus in all of our employees to come along on the journey with us.
So where did that focus come from then? Who instigated that? And when
so that came from our group, actually. And I came in as a head of an ISG probably towards the middle to the end of that process. Yeah. So our former director helped jumpstart that and just had a series of workshops with our team and our statutory board, and just, had a good pulse on what was important in the industry to really help us narrow down. Because you're right, sustainability can mean so many different things to so many different people, and it depends on the industry. It depends on where you are in the supply chain. Construction supply chain is vast. So, we really did focus in really intensely a few years ago, which has really helped just shape everything so we don't go off on too many tangents. I
find that as well. When I set my company up was back in 2007. Yeah. And sustainability was not an overused word at all back then. In fact, it was like a hardly ever used word.
Yeah. Yeah.
But now it's so used. And I think it feels the same for the phrase net zero as well. I think that's probably going to go that way also.
You are so right. I think one of the challenges we are facing is we have clients that have incredible intentions around net zero, and they come to us, but they don't exactly know what they want, and they don't exactly know what net zero means to them. So one thing that we have just tried to do a much better job on in the past few years is getting in with clients as early as possible to help shape what that means to them, and working with the consultants a lot earlier than perhaps we would have 5-10 years ago. Because I think, in the past, we would get handed over a project at the end of Reba Stage 4, and it was onwards and upwards. Everything was designed, and construction team just get it done. But now, contracts have changed. The design process has changed. It's much more integrated. So we do have a real responsibility to bring our construction expertise to the table much earlier. And it really helps shape budgets and programs and expectations much earlier on.
So everyone that I speak to says effectively the same thing, which is we're trying to get involved with clients a lot earlier. Yeah. But lots of them, if not all of them, feel this frustration. I know me and my team do feel that frustration. Is that the same for yourself?
In terms of being able to get on earlier?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. We do have some fantastic opportunities to get in earlier. I think we're seeing that more and more now. I think the client landscape is changing in that regard. Yeah. But yes, there are still loads of projects that come in where we just don't have a great opportunity, especially in the fit out and high street retail world, where the projects are really quick. You win a project and you have to be on site in a week, stripping out. So sometimes there just isn't the time that you would want to make it a big success.
Do you think that's the blocker? Do you think that's the reason why? Is because of that lack of organization or the speed that they need to?
I think it's one of the blockers. The intensity of the quick programs is a real challenge. There's so many great things that we would want to be doing if we just had more time. Yeah. And that's just not a reality for some projects. And we get that. So we try to do what we can with what we're given a lot of the times. But, we have had projects extended in the pre-con phase because the client is really passionate about making it work. And I think one of the things that we need to do more of in construction is just being really honest and not kind of selling the dream in the tender phase and just saying, we can do this in this amount of time, but if you just gave us a bit more time, we really could make this work and make it a bit more meaningful to your final outcome, rather than just some tack-on, bolt-on thing that's just a box-ticking exercise.
So 2 things that have kind of piqued my interest in what you've said is the first thing is the speed. Yeah. Why do you think it is that fast? why do you think it is so rushed? And does it really need to be that way?
It's the $1 million question, Derek. Gosh.
If you can solve it for us now, that'd be great.
Yeah,
That's what you need to do.
Time is money. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? Time is money. Construction loans are money. The longer you have your loan out, the more you're paying. I mean, it's just the reality of the landscape. And the economic landscape right now is not very favorable in terms of interest rates and
but there's still
inflation.
Lots of money around, though. Right now, I appreciate that interest rates have gone up significantly.
Yeah.
But I think anyone that's connected to anyone within finance knows that there is significant funds that are just sat waiting to be invested. So I don't think it's a lack of money that's really the issue.
And I wouldn't say that's my area of expertise at all, but I think people and investors are really keen to invest in really good projects that are, that kind of tick all the bells and whistles for sustainability. Okay. Those are the kind of projects I think people are willing to invest in. And it tumbles all the way down to things like insurance.
Okay.
I had a really good conversation with an insurance agent at an event a few weeks ago, and it's just all of these bolt-on effects. The insurance industry is very keen but cautious about what they'll insure. Okay. We're talking about things like mass timber, and it's a whole new world out there. We talked about everything from mass timber to buildings that sit vacant that have higher insurance premiums because no one's there to oversee them. Okay. And they have issues that just run on for months instead of getting nipped in the bud in a day or two. So there is a knock-on effect to inefficient and empty buildings that aren't performing the way they could. Yeah. So, going back to your original point, I think people do want to invest in really great projects. And whether that means a bit more time on the front end to make them solid, I guess that's up for debate. But in my experience, sometimes when we have a bit more time, I think we get a really good outcome.
Good. And you mentioned that there are some clients that you've worked with that are willing to extend the project cycle, or the time of the project in order to get things right. Yeah. How far have you seen them extend the time frame?
A couple months in the pre-con phase, actually. A couple of months. Okay. Yeah, which I think is pretty significant if you're talking around a commercial office fit out. A particular project I'm thinking about. So, it really just depends on the drivers for the client. They were willing to splash out a little bit more on the front end to make sure that they got the outcome they needed. And again, it depends on who the client's answering to, which eyeballs are on the client. Are they doing it for a mixture of internal or external reasons? There's all sorts of things that go into this, and there's a lot of different drivers. But I think some clients are willing to spend a bit more quality time on the front end to make sure it's right.
So let's just rewind a little bit. And you mentioned that you came into ISG, and it sounds like since you've been in the company, there's been significant changes and things have happened, and you spoke about that focus. Yeah. But let's take it back before that. What were you doing before that? There's some rumor going around that you were a figure skater.
You've clicked the down arrow on my LinkedIn page. Yeah. In a former life, I was a professional figure skater.
Professional?
I was, and I did that up until I mixed it with the start of uni, and then I got real and realized, the Olympics were not in my future. Okay. So I carried on in uni, and I went to architecture school and just kind of moved on with my life. But, had a really good foundation of life skills laid in the world of competitive and professional figure skating.
So talk to me about figure skating, how you got into it.
Yeah.
Some of the lessons that you learned from it. I guess there's a whole community around that and a connection that you had.
Yeah, as you can imagine, it is a very niche community. I fell into it by accident, actually. I was 7 or 8, and I was meant to sign up for this after-school gymnastics program, and my mom just forgot to sign me up for it. But figure skating was the booby prize. So I couldn't get you into this gymnastics thing. But do you want to try ice skating instead? And I was like, okay. I was pretty bummed. No. Yeah. So little did my mother know that set off kind of a collision course into the world of competitive figure skating, and then
did she do you a favor then? You think your mom was actually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my best friend for life still, my best friend I met when I was 8 years old skating. So no, it set me up for a lot of great things. The world of competitive, kind of high level competitive sports comes with its downsides, but I think I'm really aware of what those were. And I think I can look back and take away some really great things about that experience in terms of, the types of pressures that you put on yourself and the responsibility for the individual. Taking criticism is a huge skill to be learned. That is, very difficult for some people. I still, it's something I still work on, taking criticism. But in that kind of high pressure situation, you either take it or you don't. You can't move. You can't be uncoachable in those situations, or else you won't improve. So no, I've taken a lot of things away from it. I think it comes out when I do kind of public speaking or events. I'm really comfortable in front of an audience, generally, depending on the topic. So I think that all came from my time on the ice. Yeah,
great. And when did you become aware of that actually taking criticism, as you put it, is actually a good thing as opposed to a negative thing?
That's something I don't think I realized was something, which was a skill I learned in skating that I needed to foray into my everyday life, probably only within the last kind of 10 years. And I'm way better at taking criticism in some facets of my life than others. I think we all... it's all difficult for us to take criticism in our interpersonal relationships with our family. But, I think that's a different type of criticism.
Is the process not the same, though?
It is, but it comes from a different place from those that are closest to you, I think. So it's easier to take it more personally. Whereas, if it's coming from a coach or from a professional, in a professional way, for me, it's easy for me to understand that like business is business. Sometimes I might take things away and have a bit of a closer think about it. But, business is business. And, if you need a bit of coaching or, constructive criticism along the way, it's important to take that and swish it around in your head and make sure you just improve from it. And instead of letting it, just completely block you and making you come to a standstill. So, it's definitely a skill.
But from your family, different scenario.
I don't know.
Your parents, your husband, your siblings.
It's a work in progress, and it's something that actually it's something that I've been trying to instill in my kids. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm just you need to be able to take these things and improve. I'm not just trying to be mean mommy. I'm trying to help you. So
as a parent of 4 children, I am subjected to criticism, especially because my oldest is 20, my youngest is 15. So they're really, really close together in age. But they are definitely old enough to give me their opinion. So their opinion is around what I wear, things that I watch, like the whole thing. And what I've learned, I think, as a parent, maybe you've learned this the same, is my kids do not listen to what I say, but they listen to everything I do.
You are absolutely right. I think especially for kids, they might get, I don't know how to term it, maybe lesson in getting talked at fatigue.
Yes.
Because they get it at school.
Do you do that as a mum? Like, do you do the whole 20-minute lecture and you're like, oh, wow, look how much time's passed?
I try not to, because I'm pretty hyper aware. I have one child we talked about. I do have one child with dyslexia, and I know he gets very fatigued at school. He really has to concentrate, and he comes home incredibly tired. So I think I'm pretty hyper aware of not doing the whole talk, because they just don't have the capacity to hear it anymore. But so I totally agree with you in that actions speak louder than words in some instances. So, yeah.
That's my hardest lesson as a parent. So kind of going back to that feedback, that was one of the things that I've learned and proactively try to work on. But
it's difficult because you want to be able to just talk to them, but you have to remember that they're just children. It's difficult. It's always a balance.
So let's talk, let's go back to your figure skating and some of the lessons that you've learned. You mentioned that you've got a community and one of your best friends, or your best friend? 8 years old.
We're
so
still
on up?
really good friends. We talk a couple of times a week. There is, if you can think, you must imagine in any niche sport, there's a bit of a weird community.
Okay.
Weird
Sounds like
but
you've got
fantastic.
a story there. Weird community. What stuff did you get up to?
I don't know. Maybe it's not so weird, but I don't know. But my perspective of people who do niche sports is that you kind of have to be a bit weird to be really into them. But I'm a self-proclaimed weirdo, so I don't mind that. But when you really get into a competitive sport like that, and maybe it's similar with something like gymnastics, it's a small community. Yeah. You're around hyper competitive people.
Yeah.
You don't stick with a sport like that unless you're really competitive. Your friends are your competitors because it's an individual sport, which is a really interesting dynamic, which I think makes it, sets it apart from a team sport. So you have to, strike that balance right when you are competing against your best friends. So you kind of have to be able to modulate your competitive mode with your friend mode when it's leading up to a big competition or who's going to land this new jump first. It's a community that, I'm not very close to anymore per se. My best friend's mom just happened to be my coach too. So in that sense, I'm still a bit, I get the gossip every now and then, but I'd say very much disconnected from that community now. But, I took amazing things away from it. So,
did you compete at international level?
I did.
You did. Okay, fine. But you didn't make the Olympic grade?
No. I competed at an international level, not at like the highest level of skating, because international competition starts in skating kind of at the junior ranks. Mm-hmm. So I did that. I was not Olympic bound. And that's another interesting lesson I took from it was, just because you're really good and passionate about something, sometimes you need to learn when to let it go a bit and to keep it in your heart and take really fantastic things away from them, but know when it's time to pivot a bit.
Talk to me about that. When did that start for you and what did that look like? And was there a mourning period that you went through?
No, actually. I think for me, I think I was always uni bound. That was just something my parents were like, it just was never a question. You're going to uni. Yeah. And really early on in something like figure skating if you're going to the Olympics. So I think I always knew that wasn't my future, but I was going to ride it out and enjoy it. And I think I was pretty relieved when the competitive aspect of it stopped because I could focus on something else and I didn't get stuck in it or have any misconceptions about my longevity in the sport. That's not to say that, it's fantastic for people who stay in it. It just wasn't for me. So it was time to move on to something that could, just kind of be the next fun phase of my life. New challenge.
So how did you go then from niche skating on ice to niche sustainability?
I guess it is a bit niche, isn't it?
Extremely niche.
So I went to architecture school, and in my last year realized I didn't want to be an architect. And so we have a career fair at our architecture school, and I was introduced to the world of construction.
Which architecture school was that you went to?
I went to the University of Maryland in the United States.
Yeah,
right outside of Washington, D.C. Maryland, as you would say here. But us Marylanders don't pronounce the Y. So there are so many fantastic alternative career paths in so many things. Right. I started in construction right out of uni. Right. At the time, that was, I'm aging myself, that was 2004. Sustainability and construction in America was really in its infantile stages.
Feels like it still is now, though.
They've come a long way. I will say I don't have the pulse on everything that's going on in the U.S. Totally. I've been here for 12 years now. But I started at this huge construction company, a big national construction company, and I was in their graduate program. And like so many new and niche things, some of the powers that be at the company said, hey, can some of you young whippersnapper graduates sort out sustainability for us? Okay. And I'd already, been introduced to sustainability in architecture school. So I was really keen, and I thought it was a fun opportunity to do something that was a bit different, stay on the graduate track, but still stand out a bit and do something a bit fun. So, I've been doing sustainability in construction since day one.
Seems a bit of a theme with you, with being niche.
Yeah, I don't know why that
skating,
is. Maybe
you
there's
put your
some
hand
sort of
up.
deep-seated psychological issue going on there, but
I think it's great.
to stand out.
I think it's great. It's the way to stand out, isn't
But
it?
yeah, and
Sure.
you know, I think one of my hopes is that sustainability now, it won't be so niche because everyone's got to get involved. So it'll become the new health and safety where everyone's just got to get on board or take a hike.
Run with
Yeah.
it. Good.
Yeah.
So just talk about the early stages of your career. So you put your hand up or you got volunteered to go and work on this project. What was that project?
So it wasn't a specific project for sustainability,
Okay.
but there was a really big project that I put my hand up for actually in our construction company. I think that's another theme is, I think you and I talked about this. You know, you won't get something if you don't ask for it.
Okay.
And we had a huge kind of flagship baseball stadium project coming through the company in Washington, D.C. I was living in D.C. and I just said, can I get on that job? And it was a fast-tracked design and build, 23 months from demolition to pile driving to everything to opening day. So it was really exciting. And yeah, it was, I'd say, a really incredible first job on the CV for you know, a girl in the construction industry kind of finding her feet. It was a really exciting job to be on. What
was the size of the stadium? Was it like a
so it was a
90,000
baseball
seats?
stadium, 42,000 seats.
Okay.
You know, 1 million plus square feet. It was the first LEED certified professional sports stadium in the world.
LEED as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And
this is back kind of mid 2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah. So opening day was March 2008. So we're going back quite a ways now.
Which is really forward thinking, isn't it? Really, because back in 2008, not just the US but also the UK, I think probably anywhere outside of Germany weren't really pushing anything. Sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, so the UK had BREEAM, which was, you know, I think LEED was probably born from a lot of the themes around BREEAM. But LEED really picked up in Washington, D.C. at the time because all government buildings had to have a LEED rating, or LEED certification. So I was really lucky to be working there at the time because my company just happened to build a lot of office building that needed to meet GSA requirements. So I got stuck into LEED quite early on in my career. And to be doing it on such a cool project that's a first, was really exciting. And, the U.S. Green Building Council was also based in D.C. So we had a lot of really good local support on that one to get it certified before opening day.
Were you ever involved in that, in the U.S. Green Building Council?
Yes. So when I left that construction company, I was made redundant actually during the recession. I went and worked for my local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council, which happened to be based in the U.S. Green Building Council headquarters. So I was kind of there at the coalface of the U.S. Green Building Council, which was really exciting. I was there maybe for a year and a half before I moved over to the UK.
Okay. So it looks like you just, going back to what you were saying, is kind of putting your hand up for stuff and proactively searching for stuff. Yeah. It sounds like that's what you did at the US Green Building Council.
Yeah. I found myself made redundant, as so many of us did in the construction industry. I think I made it to like the third round of redundancies at my company. And then finally, that's a good skin thickening exercise to go through redundancy. And I don't wish it upon everyone, but it's a really, really good learning experience. I was already involved with the U.S. Green Building Council. So you just got to go out and talk to people and ask. And, I had a new job within 2 weeks of my redundancy. It was,
and I guess it doesn't feel like it. I've been made redundant twice in the past. And initially when that happens, it's quite tough.
It's devastating. Tough. It's really devastating. You almost feel like, you feel like such a failure, and it's very doom and gloom. But, again, I think going back, if we're talking about lessons from my past life as a figure skater, I mean, gosh, I can't tell you how many times I bombed in competitions or just had utter failures, and you just kind of have to get back on to the next one and not let it ruin you. I got dead last in my first skating competition, actually.
Oh, really?
So But I got first in my second competition. So
That's a huge jump.
yeah.
Even that jump of emotion, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that perhaps is something I've taken away is you just kind of you have to get back on the horse and just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get on with it. And, no one's going to come and do it for you. Some people have the luxury of that, but most of us don't. And you kind of have to get on with life and onwards and upwards.
I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
No one is going to do it for you.
No. Yeah.
And I don't think anyone should, because I think that's where the benefit is, right? In
Yeah.
being proactive, because of the lessons and the growth that exists within being proactive.
Yeah. And I think, it helps if you've made some really good relationships and connections along the way. I think everyone should do that. I think networking in any industry is really important. So, when you do find yourself redundant, you have a few people you can go make some phone calls to. I mean, just a really simple instance like that. But staying well connected, knowing what's going on with your industry, knowing who you can talk to, I think is really important.
Just picking up on one thing you said there, I don't know if this was conscious. You said when you find yourself redundant, not if you find yourself redundant.
Yeah.
And there's lots of people that I speak to, specifically in senior roles, that have had that experience of redundancy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't ever want to find yourself there, but,
it's not something you look for.
Yeah.
But
we have an industry that just happens to fluctuate along with the economic times, really, really closely tied to it, like most industries. So, we expand and contract. And I think we have to have that same mindset. Long gone are the days when we're in the same job for 30 years. It's just not the reality of the landscape anymore.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you came across the jolly old England. I've got a number of friends in the US, and they do every now and again refer to it as jolly old England.
I get so many funny phrases. I'm like, no one says that here. Yeah.
But how's the transition been from American culture or US culture to UK or British culture?
Well, I think everyone knows the stereotype of Americans. I think we tend to be a bit loud. We tend to think everyone wants to be our friend, that everyone wants to have a friendly conversation on the tube with us. So that I learned very quickly was not the case here.
Okay. You didn't try that, did you? On the tube? Try and speak to someone in London on the tube?
I think I probably did, a little bit. And then you realize quickly that people just want to have space. People are slightly more passive aggressive here. They keep things a bit closer to their hip. I think one of the biggest culture shocks for me is that, the loud, friendly American is not always best placed in some situations here. So you just kind of have to gauge your audience a bit. Just be a bit more reserved when you need to understand that not everyone really cares how you're doing that day. If they ask you, it's really just a nicety to just say hello to you.
It's really hello. How are you is really hello.
Exactly. You need to learn the code words for hello. Yes.
That's fun. One of the things I do love about American culture is going back to the competition element and that you competing against your friends.
Yeah.
Is that when you have a competitor in the US, it appears as though that they are looked at as someone to aspire to, as opposed to someone to tear down.
Yeah.
And I do like that way that American culture appears to be.
I've seen elements of that here, but yeah, there is a certain kind of go-getter, you can be anything you want to be culture of Americans. So I think, perhaps maybe that spills over a bit into my day-to-day here, but I think sometimes you've got the flip side of that though, where it can be a bit detrimental, where you get the people who just kind of work themselves to the bone.
Okay.
So I think something I do enjoy about being here in the UK is that there is a bit of an awareness on your personal time and your well-being as it relates to switching off a bit. I'm not saying everyone does switch off.
So right. I've got a guy that works for me. He's from the US, and they try and get him to take some time off.
It's hard. It's a hard mindset to get out of.
And we've also got an unlimited holiday policy. So you can have as much holiday as you need, and he still has not got his head around it. How long has it been? We've had this policy in place now for over 4 years.
Yeah.
And he still has not got his head around it.
Yeah.
Just to try and get him to take 28 days off is a struggle.
Bet it's a
Real
really tough switch to get into the mindset where you're encouraged and allowed to take all of your holiday time. I mean, it's, in I think still in a lot of the places in the U.S., it's kind of frowned. Oh, you took all your holiday days this year. You like to travel, huh? Yeah. So yeah, it's a mindset change.
So I think now what we're going to do is we're going to try and debunk a few myths.
Ooh.
I think this would be a good time to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to go to what I've called the demolition zone.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so Anna, you have built this thing. It looks very beautiful, actually. It looks like it is a 18th century UK place of worship.
Yeah, I promise my models were much more ornate and complex in architecture school. This is not an indicator of my performance in architecture school.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So what does this represent for you?
So I think the myth that this represents, and is something everyone in my position in construction and beyond has faced, is I think a lot of people think that it is the sustainability team's job to get sustainability and carbon reductions across the line in our journey to net zero.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely a myth I'd like to bust, that I think we are still in the process of busting, but it really does need to come from the top down and the ground up and integrated into every enabling department that we have. From our commercial teams to our design managers, to our finance teams, to our BIM managers, everyone in between needs to help, and the process really needs to be integrated for it to work.
You're absolutely right. I've seen this in, I think, every single company that I've dealt with since my company's existed, which is, like I said before, 2007. So this is not an ISG unique thing. So this is definitely valuable for everybody.
Yeah.
To hear. Great.
So,
anything else? Go on. Anything else before you want to knock it down?
No, I was just going to ask if I get to swat it away now.
Just do what you do to get rid of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That is good. Anna, it's been great having you here on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been really fun.
Just one last thing, one last question.
Oh, okay.
What is the thing that you want the world to know that would make the biggest difference in sustainability?
Ooh, that's a really loaded question, ending on a really difficult one. I'd say if we're going to really narrow it down to buildings, I think one thing that people can do to help us all on our journey, that sounds really simple, but we don't see a lot of people or clients doing it, is having a really good understanding of how you use your building and the use that you would like to get out of your building and your occupancy patterns. These all seem like very simple things that a lot of companies just haven't pinned down yet, especially now with flexible working. There needs to be a wipe the slate clean, let's rethink how we're using these buildings.
So you're saying just get really clear on what you're going to use your building for.
How and when, and who's going to be in it.
Perfect.
And when. Yep. I think that's a fantastic starting point. Yep.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Darren. Thanks. It's been fun.